128 gigs of RAM. So,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, Erik is building a desktop with 128 gigs of RAM. The reason why is he knows that he has to test Richie's applications, and they're written really poorly.
Funny you should mention that, because I was looking at Pace to Plan this week, and I'm like, why did I do it like this? This is crazy. Why did I? Whenever they say
know what it
the
was?
code that you look at, 3 months later, you're wondering why you did it this way. It's totally true.
Old
Absolutely.
code is like old girlfriends. You look back and you just go, I don't know what was on my mind. That was the dumbest 6 months of my life. But for you, it's probably all those late nights at Pass. You did a lot of pace to plan stuff at Pass when you were, up double teaming with the
I thought
booze
you were
and
going to say he was picking up women at Pass, and I was like, no, 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 he's not that.
No.
He was
Actually, I
married.
was board gaming at Pass at late night. See, that's what you
True.
forget. Because actually, I snuck up on you at the bar one night in a down
You did.
hotel.
You did.
After
Well, we
were
walked
gaming,
into the bar
we went
together,
Mhm.
and I thought Richie went to the bathroom. He just never came back, and I was like, oh, Richie ditched me. Story of my life. So I'm just sitting at the bar drinking. I was talking to like a couple other guys who were there for Pass. Or at least they were there before, and then they left me too.
It's the last
Then, like,
man.
I'm sitting there, it's like 1 a.m. I'm just like, we're like the bar's closing down, and Richie's like, playing board
Oh.
game. Like, oh, cool. So I drank alone while you sat there and shuffled dice around.
Actually, I think I
man.
pretended to be drunk. I'm
You did.
pretty sure I did.
What? Pretend.
Yeah, I walked up and said, "Yeah, Erik, I love you, man."
Handed me
Best.
a token and said, I'm cashing this in.
We should totally just walk up behind strangers at Pass and just be like, hey, any of you guys know where the bar is? Just see if anybody recognizes it. Oh my God, it's Erik Darling. Wait.
Only one person at Pass had a positive reaction to me. Actually, well, I mean, like other people knew me, but only one guy was like, "It's you," and I was like, "Hey, what's up, man?" It was AK Valley, I believe his name was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he was very friendly, awesome guy. We talked for a little bit during, I think it was before Kendra's session on indexes, but we were talking for a little bit. And great guy, but he was the only person who was like, "You," and everyone else is kind of like, "Oh, hey, I'm Baba. I've commented on your post before."
So for reference,
Nice to see
Brent
you.
had more people recognize him at reInvent. There you go.
Yeah, with positive reactions. Some of that is the intimidating factor, though. I mean, when you talk about a guy covered in tattoos, it's hard to go, hey, because it's not like you're Mr. Rogers. You know what
That's
I mean?
not true. People read my blog posts and know that I'm a wimp.
Yeah, sure they do.
Which is the real Erik, right? Is really the question.
Yeah, just a big softy.
Big teddy bear who loves T-SQL.
That's right.
Let's see, I suppose we should get into questions. It is 15 minutes after the hour, and we'll start off with the first one that says, I have a replication question. Just kidding. Because this person sees that we don't have Tara here, so we're fresh out of replication. A fellow human says, I have a nephew who's very interested in what I do. Is database administrator still a good career choice for someone who's in high school now? Is this career going to be good for the next 40 years?
In some form, but maybe not in like a traditional DBA sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think data is always going to need a steward. I think it's always going to need someone to take care of it and to, protect it in some way and to watch, to make sure that certain things are happening that safeguard it. I don't think that it's always going to be the same backup and restore and corruption checks and, query and index tuning that it is now, but I think in some way data is always going to need someone to, make sure that the right processes are happening with it. So, well, it's good to learn what's happening now and maybe get into it now and get your feet wet. So when you're, 40 years from now, you can say, back when I started, I used to do backups myself. I used all the Hatlinger, the senior, not the junior. So, just like, so it's good to get your feet in and start doing stuff now. But whether this job and this role and the way it is now is going to last for 40 years, I doubt it. Think about cab drivers 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Look at me. I am the future of your data. This is it. My role.
That's terrifying.
Is the future, right?
So what do you think, Richie? What's your
I think it's going to be the person that understands the development side as well as the data side. That is going to be your steward. That is going to be the person that in the future with the cloud and all this other stuff's going down, I think that's going to be the person that is going to understand the data, how it works, and it's not going to be this low level, oh, I do the backups, because those are all going to be automated in SQL Server 2030, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So
but who runs the cloud?
Someone who understands the code, someone who understands the data, that is going to be the future of the DBA.
Who clouds the cloud, Richie? Who clouds the cloud?
It's the cloud.
I think
I think if you step back generally too, if you say, is any career going to be good for 40 years, and that answer is probably no. With our parents or grandparents, like my grandpa held the same job for, I want to say 40 years at the same factory. He was a unions rep or union relations rep, retired. He knew everybody in the community. My dad has held, I want to say 4 different careers. I've held a bunch of different jobs, even just, every 2 or 3 years switching out. The things that you have to learn so much quicker is just very different.
Yeah. I mean, my dad has been doing the same kind of thing forever and ever, doing sort of technical sales, writing, and marketing. But the companies and the stuff he's been doing it for have been all over the place over the years. He's at Oracle now, but he started a little company called Data General in Massachusetts that was doing this kind of at the time tiddlywink hardware when NT clusters were holy crap.
Yeah, yeah.
So now you don't have to go anywhere else, Eric. You're in your last job.
It's true.
Yeah, it's only because we think he's going to die with the rate that we eat and drink. Yeah. So you can have one career. It's just a really short lifespan now.
I basically have the lifespan of a fly.
Watch him age in front of our eyes. Next question. Oh, we got some interesting soft skills questions here today. What is the craziest thing you've heard someone wanting to do with SQL Server, or the craziest troubleshooting issue that you've had?
Who's first?
It's always, well, Richie went first, or Richie went second last time. We'll make him go first this time. Richie, what's the craziest thing you've ever heard someone wanting to do with a database server? Or just in general?
Oh, with the database server? Oh, geez, I'd have to think about that one.
All right, then Erik goes first.
Well, a couple things that pop out in memory since I've been here was one person who basically he was using CDC, change data capture, but it wasn't working the way they wanted. So they rewrote a layer over change data capture with dynamic SQL. It was CDC broke for us, so we had to rewrite it. And so they basically had this layer over CDC that did stuff for them. Another one that came to mind was people who were partitioning data by day, but when they received data, it could update prior day's stuff. So all these merge statements that they wrote were just going kablooey. They were just not getting the kind of partitioning magic that they were hoping for with things. There was sparse little partition elimination happening in that scenario.
How about you, Richie?
All right, so the craziest thing, and actually didn't turn out to be so crazy, but I was working with a QSR company, fairly large, and they had decided to write their own NoSQL database.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just common now these days.
And it was doing all these.
Everyone's doing that.
Yeah, so it's all this payment processing that's coming in, and they decided to write their own SQL database to store all this information. And where I came in is that they had no way to report off of that. So they started dumping this into SQL Server, and that's how I came into the project. But it ended up working out for them. They put a ton of effort at building their own NoSQL stuff, but it worked out. So again, maybe crazy like a fox, maybe a bit. So I can't wait to hear them upgrade to Cassandra, because that would be fun. But
I'd say the weirdest thing, there are a couple two come to mind. One was storing access databases inside a SQL Server database. And they were redoing a terabyte of access databases every day, so that was spectacularly challenging. But the thing that I was most horrified by was I went to go troubleshoot queries, and I'm like, oh, where are these queries from? And the guy says, Perl. He goes, yeah, we have a Perl application, a Perl script that goes through and generates dynamic T-SQL. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, I'm curious now. You have to show it to me. I don't. Of course,
so where does Perl sit? She writes some interesting T-SQL.
Mrs. Mini Perl.
What's her email? Let's bring her in here. Another crazy thing is a friend of mine works for. He's a lead developer at a rather large company that does news stuff. and they're still currently, as far as I know, using Oracle. But like years ago, when I first started working with databases, I was like, oh, do you guys do anything with databases? Like, yeah, we use Oracle, but we're migrating away. We're going to start doing everything with files on disk because there's no locks and it's faster. And so like every 6 months, I'll be like, hey, so how's that migration going? And he's like, we still haven't got off Oracle. Still working on it.
Yeah, the Oracle rep was not worried about losing that account at all.
He's like, oh, cool.
I'm patient. I'll give you, more. You want another renewal?
Contracts. Whenever you're ready, just sign them.
No discount. Sorry.
Oh. Let's see here. Next question. What are some common causes of SSPI handshake failed errors? Dagnabbit, what I'll do is I'll add. Yeah, SSPI.
Go ahead, but usually it's like the service account doesn't have the right delegate.
SPN stuff. Yeah, I'll add in the weekly notes a link that I've got. Robert Davis has a post. If you search for Robert Davis SSPI and set SPN, set service provider name, just all one word, set SPN, he has a great post on how to fix that.
Yeah. His posts for the T-SQL Tuesday were really cool about backups and restores.
Yeah.
I liked. It was nice to because I don't do a lot of backups and restores anymore, so it's like it's cool to like reread someone who's like, no, this is my thing, and like talk about LSNs and catching stuff up with differentials and logs and like no recovery post. He talked interesting stuff. I love reading his blogs.
He has a function to convert the LSNs from FN dump DB log? Yeah, wow.
But it's a scalar valued function, so I can't use it.
That's not fast enough for me.
Yeah, it's against my religion. I can't do it. Can't have that. Can't have the parallelism inhibited when I'm converting LSNs.
So it's against the Jedi religion? I didn't know that.
That's
good to know.
Have any of you found useful situations in which to utilize set deadlock priority high? And he's got a whole paragraph of other stuff in there, but basically, have you ever thought about setting deadlock priority high on a query?
No, only low, and only for like index rebuilds, which I think is what it was for, for the most part. But no, high.
Yeah, I always get worried overriding someone else's session and like making them roll back when they may not be the cheaper one to roll back.
Yeah.
I would also say if you find yourself doing deadlock priority high, and if it's anything like a report, maybe it's time to think about a reporting server or a different isolation level.
Or at least it's no lock hints, man. Come on, make it.
Dirty reads. That's what
wrong data.
DBA. We need to get Kill a DBA on a song called Dirty Reads.
Oh, yes!
Someone make this happen.
Coming straight out of Detroit. It's Dirty Reads.
Fellow Human asks, we run stats or update stats with full scan on our key tables every night. And I noticed the other day that there was a command update statistics with full scan that was threaded out, meaning it went parallel. My concern is that I currently have MaxStop set to 1. Do some Microsoft commands simply ignore MaxStop and do what they want?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Does update stats do that? I don't even know.
Yeah, so I want to say it's Bob Ward, but it might have been another Bob or someone else at Microsoft. But I just associate most of the really good blogs with Bob Ward, or the Bob blog. But there was one, I think it might have been during his 2016 It Just Runs Faster talk. I think he was talking about how sometimes even on a server with MaxStop set to 1, you'll still see some CX packet waits for some things, and that's because some system commands will use parallelism behind the scenes, whether you want them to or not. So,
which is cool. I like that.
Stats is one of them. And I think I want to say no. There was that trace flag where you could update more than one stat at a time on a table, and that was one of those things where it was like, no, these are definitely going to go parallel because you probably need it if you're doing all that. But there was something about parallelism in that one too.
Nice. Oh, God. Tammy asks a question, and I'll try to keep the poker face on for Tammy there. You are all smart, so I thought I'd ask. There's your first mistake. I want to query Active Directory, okay, strike 1, using PowerShell, strike 2, to get all the CNAMEs for my servers, strike 3. Any suggestions? Mike Fowl. You want Mike Fowl. It's like the word fall, but only with one L. Mike Fowl will probably have... Yeah. Fail without the I. He's a really nice guy, PowerShell guru, knows systems type stuff, and he may be able to answer that one for you. If not, I would actually post it on Stack Exchange, dba.stackexchange.com, and I bet somebody's got a script for it already.
Or if you're more of a Slack person, the SQL community chat has a big PowerShell room where they work on those DBA tools, and so someone in there might be able to help. Because I mean just shot in the dark, but I'm willing to bet someone in there is maybe doing something with log shipping where getting CNAME aliases would be really, really helpful.
Well, as opposed to going to DBA, it's server fault is probably the better one to post that in.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, server fault. So not the dba.stackexchange or
It's
whatever.
weird that there's no PowerShell.stackexchange.com, right? You think they'd want to keep those people out of general population.
I thought when Erik said go to the Slack channel, it's basically because if you tell someone, can you do this in PowerShell, the answer is always yes, and they will always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's lots of Thors wielding the PowerShell hammer in that room over there.
Which is good. We love them. Nothing against them. dbatools.io is where you'll go find their site and their Slack channel.
I change my underwear with PowerShell.
Only once a week, though.
True story.
Would like to get Brent's take on vMotion for high availability. Can it replace SQL Server clustering? Erik, how about your take?
I don't have one. You know me and VMs, man. I never spin those up. So vMotion, no, because if SQL crashes, all right, where a cluster would pick that up and say, hey, we're going to try to restart SQL, or we're going to try to restart SQL on another node. VMware doesn't really cover that too well, as far as I know. So I don't know if that's the way I'd go with it.
All right, so let's see here. What's Windows? Okay.
We could actually, say that we got a call on Sunday with this exact problem where they had a vMotion on a backup and they thought that was adequate, and the whole database got corrupt and there was a whole bunch of other stuff and they couldn't give it back. So there's your answer.
That wasn't even availability. That wasn't, let alone high availability. It was unavailability. Next question, what's the best practice on Windows Server 2012 page files? As my Windows admin says, we only need 16 megabytes for the crash dump and then leave the rest to physical RAM, but I'm seeing a scenario where SQL Server needs more memory and it's showing resource semaphore waits. Okay, so hold that thought. So Erik, do you want to answer that one? Would you increase the page file size?
No, because I really wouldn't want SQL Server paging that to disk. I would probably want to add more actual memory, or increase the max memory if it's undersubscribed right now. If like you have more memory in the server than you have, maybe then you're giving the SQL. But really, resource semaphore means that SQL Server does not have enough physical memory. That is not a page file problem. Page file should be teeny tiny on a SQL Server because you shouldn't be doing anything with the page file there. You should avoid that like the plague. No. But it was funny during the first DBA days. Someone was like, "Should I have a 512 gig page file?" And I thought that you guys were messing with me. I thought I was being hazed. And I was like, "Did you ask me that right?" I was like, 512 gigs? No. I was like, they're screwing with me. Like Jeremiah's going to come behind me and give me an atomic wedgie after I answer this question. And it's going to, Indian burn. There's no way this is a real question. But yeah, really, no. Resource semaphore waits are horrible. They are poisonous. So resource semaphore, you may also see resource semaphore query compile when that pops up, and that is just does not have enough memory to do anything when that happens. You have queries waiting to compile because they can't get memory to compile, and queries waiting to run because they can't get memory to run. I don't see the question, but if you're on a newer version of SQL Server, you can run SP Blitzcache and sort by memory grants and see. So if you're on SQL Server, 2012 SP3 or 2014 SP2 or 2016, any old version, you can run Blitzcache and sort by memory grants and get all sorts of good information about what queries are using giant chunks of memory, and maybe get a hint there. But really, if your server has like 12 gigs of memory in it, that's your bigger problem, not the query memory grants.
I have to say, it's one of my favorite questions ever. I like that quite a bit.
Why didn't you answer it? Shuffling it off.
I saw your face go, and I'm like, there you go. That's awesome.
It just reminded me of that DBA days thing, and I got all nostalgic, and I was like, oh, yeah, they asked me if I should have a 512 gig page file.
And now those of you watching on the webcams can see Jeremiah sneaking up and giving Erik an atomic wedgie. Let's see here. Next up, we have a transaction log backup that keeps hanging, meaning it runs for hours until I manually cancel and restart it. Normally, it only takes 10 seconds to run, and it just happens randomly. Any suggestions on where to start investigating? Ooh. I like who is active for that. I would run SP who is active and see if there's either that something's blocking it, because I can envision scenarios where there's blocking in MSDB and the thing isn't able to update the MSDB completion type stuff, or that it's waiting for something like a wait stat shows something, growing a file, creating a file on a network file share. That's probably where I would start.
Yeah, so what weights would you look for? They're like, would it be backup I/O or async I/O completion or backup thread or just one of those things maybe just going?
I have a feeling that and this is, of course, I'm just making stuff up, but yeah. I have a feeling that it's creating the file, that it's either creating the file or writing to the file. Like if you have a network blip and there's a problem writing to the network server on the other end. Yeah. That's my. Or
if it happens at a particular time where it's kind of like it's repeatable. I bet a bunch of stuff is writing to that drive at the same time, and it's all just kind of saturated. That could be it too. Or if
over and over again, I see DBAs go set up all their log backups to run every 15 minutes, and everybody's like nuclear clock synchronized. So exactly at 15 minutes, the file share just falls over. Boom. Fellow Human says vMotion cannot guarantee transactional integrity. Put the crack pipe down. That it totally works just fine in terms of transactional integrity. What you might be thinking is it can cause a cluster to fail over, a database mirroring to fall over, but it is completely transparent to SQL Server otherwise.
I mean, like one thing that does come up sometimes with vMotion is that if Windows crashes, you have the reboot time on the wherever it brings back up. So it's not as fast as a cluster where that other node is just sitting there like, I've got Windows, I'm ready to go. It's just like where you just fail SQL Server over, and it's just pretty much the SQL Server startup time and whatever resource motion or not motion, but whatever resource failover happens.
Follow up on the page file question. He says, we did increase the physical RAM, but then earlier we'd had a paging issue and modified memory grew. Even after we added physical RAM, the modified memory is not getting released. I'm not sure what you mean by modified memory. If you want, search for, just hit Google and Brent Ozar, sysadmin's guide to SQL Server memory. And we explain how the basic memory process works in there and whether or not it gets freed up and why.
Something very weird has happened in my audio.
What? Well, let's see here. Next one. I need to migrate a bunch of. I'll let you play with audio and then holler whenever you're done.
Yeah.
I need to migrate a bunch of larger databases, and I can't take a significant outage on Saturday night. Okay, well, so how about Sunday? Sunday works for me. Sunday works not for me. I'm going to be somewhere else. Yeah. I was thinking about Saturday morning, restoring the last full backup in diff, and then an hour before a short outage, I take this. So all you really want to do is log shipping. Either do log shipping or database mirroring. I'm kind of a fan of log shipping for this because it works kind of like what you're describing. Database mirroring is a little bit more painful to set up, but it's still pretty easy. But log shipping is really slick. We actually cover this exact technique for migrations in our senior DBA class, which I happen to be teaching this week online. Yesterday I was talking about how you use log shipping to migrate databases from one place to another and using the with no recovery for your last transaction log backup. So check into that.
I think I'm working again.
I don't know that you've ever really worked, but
no.
Your audio is working.
Before I worked here. Before I got hired here, rather. Quite a bit of work, sir.
Erik asks, I went away from Idera's defrag manager and I went to Ola Hollengren scripts. However, the update usage in stat step is trashing tempdb. Why is this? I'm on SQL Server 2008 R2.
Update usage? Ola Hollengren runs update usage?
I'm surprised. Oh, well, I can see it in the checkdb step, maybe. Maybe in the checkdb it has dbcc update usage, but I'd be surprised with that too.
No.
No.
I've never seen that because I used to run that all the time, and I never ran into that.
Stats step 2. I mean, updating statistics, how that would trash TempDB. I would imagine, so I'm going to say something horrible. Anything OLA's stuff does, Idera should have been doing. So that would kind of make me wonder the opposite thing. Why isn't, if OLA's script is doing it, I wonder why Idera's is not.
Yeah, I would also be curious about what values you're running OLA's scripts with. That's what I would have some questions about because you know, like for the years and the number of machines that I've run OLA scripts on, I never had a problem with them trashing TempDB. The one time that the stats update trashed TempDB was when I updated with a full scan all the stats on a table used for some kind of logging that was around 2.8 terabytes in size. So that was the one time I messed up TempDB doing a stats update. That was me. That was one file that got real big.
Let's see, next question. What kind of advice do you guys have for managing batch loads to a database while end users are still querying it? Like, do you manage locking when you're doing batch loads? Richie, how about you? Have you got experience with that? Like doing batches?
While they're querying? No. Not that I've had any problems with locks or anything like that. So not on some really high transactional system. We've always been able to dump data, and locks are handling it. Usually if your hardware is good enough, then you should be able to handle pretty much anything.
So they're basically saying that your hardware isn't good enough. That's what Richie's saying. He's saying here, have an SSD. Good luck. How about you, Erik? Any advice on that one?
It depends on what kind of situation you're in. And how you're doing your loads. So if you're using bulk insert, you can control the batch size so that maybe you don't put 1 million rows in at once. You can do like smaller chunks going in. If you're on, expensive edition or 2016 SP1, you have some partitioning tricks you might be able to do so that you don't totally wonk up people's stuff where you're loading data into a new partition and then swapping it in. And I guess as a third option, if you're on just about any edition and you sort of have some competency, you could always try using optimistic isolation levels to cut down on the amount of locking problems you have while you're pushing data into a thing. Just jammed it on in there, like Al Bundy with a fat woman's foot.
I love bulk loads. It's so awesome.
I'm just going to leave that there. I'm not going to ask anything about that. I'm just going to leave that just where it is. J8 asks, I have SQL Server 2008. I've got the latest and last service pack applied to it. Is it possible to apply vulnerability hotfixes afterwards? Should a specific KB article be applied to fix it? That's a great kind of question that you could go ask Microsoft support or go into stackexchange.com. Usually if you go filter for those kinds of KB articles, you can find more details about those. We don't do any patching on SQL Server 2008. Nothing against it. It's just not something that we go dig that much into. Fellow Human says, I've discovered 10 custom statistics. Thank you for SP Blitz. And I deleted them. As a result of deleting my custom statistics, CPU utilization dropped by 20%. Does that mean that custom statistics were giving me suboptimal execution plans?
Maybe.
Maybe. If you suspected that a change to SQL Server was making execution plans better, where would you go look?
If a change to SQL Server was making execution plans better, where would I look? Well, that's really hard for statistics because you don't know what statistics SQL Server is using unless you use some black magic trace flags. So that's a tough one. It's tough to look there for statistics. You don't get a lot of information about stats the way you do about indexes. You don't get like usage counts or like how fragmented they are. Just kidding. But you don't get that kind of information about statistics unless you use some crazy trace flags out there, which you can Google about. Paul White talks about them in several blog posts. I use them in several blog posts, but you should really go back to the source and look at Paul White's blog posts about where stats are getting used.
And you would have to know the queries ahead of time and run them with those trace flags in order to know whether or not it was getting better or worse. I would just, if I was you, take full credit for it and tell your boss, yep, I totally did that, and then keep right on trucking. Next question on that point, we dropped 400 hypothetical indexes the other day. Hypothetical indexes have real stats. My mind was blown in all my years of being in all my year of being a DBA. I'd never seen that. Well, yeah, because the SQL Server has to figure out whether or not it would use those hypothetical indexes. So it builds stats on them when it goes and builds the hypothetical index. Christopher says, I have a SQL Server 2012 always-on availability group created, and it works well. However, a dev has asked me for a reporting server off of this data. I don't want their reports to interfere with production. Do I make a new separate SQL Server, or can I just add it to the existing secondaries and make sure they put application intent equals read-only? And how do I police that? Ooh, that's a good set of questions.
Wish Tara was here.
I wish Tara was here. Man. So the first thing you want to know is, like, is it synchronous AGs? If you're doing a synchronous AG, then putting queries on the secondary can totally slow it down. Even in an async, you can get into positions where queries can cause locks that will slow down applications on the primary. I wouldn't let that slow me down if you're interested in it. What I would let it slow me down is the licensing. Because if you now have to run reports against a server, it now has to be licensed. So I would want to check with management and see. And of course, that's Enterprise Edition if you're talking readable secondaries. That's real money. Oh, interesting question. Have you guys considered about talking about any add-on tools such as MDS, SSIS, or analysis services in your podcasts?
No.
No. Yeah, no, only because we don't use it. We're super specialized in just the engine. We just focus on the database engine. And even if you just look at the database engine, the size and scope of that thing has grown so much in the last 2 releases. R, Polybase, Hadoop, column store indexes, CLR, DLLs. I mean, you could go on and on for all the stuff in the engine that we don't even cover. So yeah, we try to just be good about queries, indexes, high availability, disaster recovery.
And you know, the thing is, there are so many people out there who are already good at that stuff and specialize in that stuff that if I need to figure something out or help someone with something or learn something about a particular topic in one of those really outside of the core engine realm, then I can go, Google it and read about it. But me, I still haven't opened a single one of those. When I install SQL on my laptop, I only install the core engine, and well, now Management Studio is a separate, but I don't touch that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I have to touch SSIS again, I'm going to run out of this room screaming.
Every time there's a new release, I always add in all the extra features that are new, and then I discover within a month that I don't touch them. That I didn't. Like, I installed R, and I saw that it added like 20 service accounts to my engine, and I'm like, what in the Sam hell is this? And I don't even know what an R script looks like. So. Yeah.
It's not that I wouldn't want to, learn R, because like Buck Woody talks about R and makes it super interesting. So it's like, I always want to look at his blog and be like, oh, cool, let me get, see what's going on here. But then, like, at the end of the day, I just have so much, regular SQL stuff to do and learn and write about that I just can't, unless I was really forced to, I don't think I could invest that much time in R.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be the guy who forces you to do that.
So the answer is can't touch us. That's pretty much.
If you want to learn about the stuff that's outside of SQL Server's engine, what you should do right now is, for those of you who are watching the live podcast, go over to groupby.org. Groupby.org, as in the SQL statement, groupby.org has sessions available for voting right now. There are sessions in the running for R, Column Store, Apache, Zeppelin. And one of the ones that's highly ranked right now is SSRS, a high-performance SSRS session that looks like it's going to make the cut. So if you're listening to that podcast afterwards, voting's already finished. Voting closes Friday, December the 16th. And then the live free webcast will be on Friday, January 13th. So you can go over to GroupBuy and register to attend the free webcast.
One of the crazy things about all these new features is that sometimes you just have to be your own expert in them, because there isn't one. There's no,
Mm-hmm.
No one knows all the best practices around Polybase and that stuff these days. There's no one who's an expert in it. So maybe you can be the expert in it. Maybe you figure that all out.
Maybe you could be Lewis or Clark. Which one shot himself?
That could be your niche.
Lewis? That's right.
Both.
Every time there's a new feature out, like before when Column Store came out, I said to anybody, I'm like, you could be the Kalen Delaney of Column Store. You can be the the Paul Randall of R. There's this is just wide open to anybody who wants to blog about it, but you are going to have to use it in production, get your hands dirty, and then blog and share what you learn. All right, well, thanks everybody for coming and hanging out with us this week, and we will see you guys next week at office hours. Adios.
See Rogue One.